the consumer buying behavior is influenced by the past experience and learning of the consumers. Ego is a balance between both the ID and super ego. This society can be classified into two categories. First one, primary group and secondary group. Under consumer buying behavior model, we have two types. So one is traditional model and second one contemporary model. Hello everyone, I am Meghana from the Department of Commerce, lecturing in Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence. We are in the session 4 of Unit 3, Subject Marketing Management. In the last session, we have discussed with the consumer buying behavior and one model on consumer buying behavior. In today's session, let us discuss with the consumer buying behavior models. So let us start with the today's session. So yesterday we finished with the economic models. So basically economic model says the consumer buying behavior is totally influenced by the purchasing power of the consumer as well as the concept of utility. So this is all about economic model. The next is learning models. So under traditional model, first one is economic model, second one learning models. All theories of buyer behavior have basically based on the learning model, namely stimulation, response, or more popularly known as SR model, that is stimulation response, popularly known as SR models. So SR learning theory is very useful to modern marketing and marketers. Learning is the centrifugal point in the entire study of human behavior. That means learning is an important factor in the consumer buying behavior. So it is based on the stimuli and response. So it is popularly known as SR theory or SR models. Learning, as noted earlier, refers to changes in the behavior which occurs as a result of practice. That means changes in the consumer behavior. Consumer taste and preference are changing from time to time. So you need to learn the changes. So it is based on the past practice or experience. So from the previous experience, the behavior is changed from the purchasing behavior, the consumer behavior is changed from one time to another time. So it is based on the past experience or practice. So it is a change in the behavior that results from the previous experience and behavior in a similar situation. So from the previous experience and behavior in a similar situation, the result of this, the changes in consumer buying behavior. So learning is the product of reasoning, thinking, information, processing, and of course perception. Therefore, behavior is deeply affected by the learning experience of the buyer. So learning is an important factor. The learning is the product of reasoning, then thinking, information, processing, and of course perception. So perception, consumer perception. Therefore, buying behavior is deeply affected by the learning experience of the buyer. So if the consumer is satisfied with your products, then again they are going to purchase the same product. If the consumer is not satisfied with your products, then he is going to purchase different products. So from the past experience, the behavior of consumer buying behavior will change. So you need to learn the consumer buying behavior, or you need to study the consumer behavior. Based on their past experience, their buying behavior will change from time to time. So you need to analyze, you need to study the consumer buying behavior. This is learning models. So this model can be explained through one diagram. First one, so D means drive, C means cues, R means response. So here D means drive. Drive means internal stimuli. So from the buyer, they make decision or they take a decision from their internal stimuli or internal push. So here this is the consumer personal response. Consumer Personal response or opinion. So next, cues. Cues means external factors. So cue means external or environmental cues. Here, from the advertisement or through various factors, the consumer may influence to purchase some products. So here the needs or desire arises. So within the consumer's internal push. Here the consumer will get attract towards any products or internal needs and wants, desires arised. So here this is the internal factors, consumer internal factor or internal push. For this, for the internal factors or for internal desire, the environment is going to support. So the consumer will get the information, relative information from the external sources or environment. So from the environment, he get positive or it may be a negative result. So the consumer will get the information from the environment. So environment cues, it influence consumer buying behavior. Then last one, response. From these two factors, from analyzing these two factors, the consumer is going to response for their needs and wants, whether it may be negative or it may be negatives. For example, through an advertisement, the consumer will get attract towards a smartphone so that he desired to purchase a new version of smartphones. So for the desire of consumers, he get the environment cues. So from the external sources or from the environments, he get the information about the products. So the products which the consumer desire to purchase, so he collect the information from the external sources. So from his relative, friends, family members, he collect the information. So from the analysis of this two, from the internal desires or internal push as well as the environmental cues, he make a decision, that is response. Going to make a decision whether to purchase, that is positive, or it may be negative. So here for the internal and external, from the internal push and external environmental cues, he is going to respond for the stimuli or is going to respond for the desire, needs and wants. Either it may be positive or it may be negative. So from the analysis of these two drives and cues, he is going to respond for the desire and needs. So it may be a negative or positive. So after consuming, if it is a positive result, is going to purchase the product. So after consumption, after purchase, he is going to use the product, then he is going to give the feedback. So whether it is satisfied or not. If the consumer is satisfied, means then from the past experience, that means from the experience of this situation, again in the future he is going to make a decision. So whether this brand is satisfactory or not. So from this experience, in future he is going to make a decision. As well as in the past experience of his buying decision, he may take the decision in this situation also. So here the consumer buying behavior is influenced by the past experience and learning of the consumers. So here it is influenced by the internal push as well as the environmental cues. For that he is going to respond for the needs and wants. So either it may be a positive or negative. So this is all about learning models. Next model, psychoanalytical models. So under traditional model, third one is psychoanalytical model. It can be explained through this diagram: ID, superego and ego. So here ID and superego. Ego is the balance between the ID and superego. What is psychoanalytical model? According to this model, the individual consumer has a complex set of deep-seated motives which drives him towards certain buying decision. The buyer has a private word with all his hidden fears, suppressed desire and totally subjective longings. His buying action can be influenced by appealing to this desire and longings. That means here the consumer buying behavior is influenced by both the conscious and subconscious mind. So deeply, the consumer buying behavior is complex set of deep seated motives which drive towards a certain buying decision, either with all its hidden fears, suppressed desire, and totally subjective longings. So here the consumer buying behavior is totally influenced by both the conscious and subconscious mind. So sometimes the consumer may know, consumer will know that it is a duplicate version of the original product. So it's a duplicate product, but its subconscious mind says, it's the consumer subconscious mind says it is a duplicate product, don't buy that product. But it's a conscious mind, it says purchase the product. So it is influenced by both the conscious and subconscious mind. So here ID, superego and ego here. For example, to explain this psychoanalytical model, I can explain you with one example. That is for the students, for the offline students, ID here, he is a pursuer. ID means pursuer. That means they are ready to agree with the other person. So when he is going to make a decision, he is ready to agree with the other person what he says. So ID is a person who is ready to agree the other's opinion, that is pursuer. Here superego is a desuder. That means he is not going to agree with the other person. So he make the decision for himself. He is not going to consider the others opinion. So here is a pursuer, here is a desuder. So this ego is a balance between the ego ID and superego. Here for example, a group of students are there. So one person or one group, they say just bunk the class. So this ID, the person with ID, he agree with the other's opinion. So, okay, let's bunk the class. But superego is a desuder. So, it's not ready to agree with the other's opinion. So, I'm not going to bunk the class. I will attend the class. So, is the superego, desuder. Here, ego is a balance between the ID and superego. Here, the person, sometimes they'll agree with the other person opinion, and sometimes he make a decision for himself. So this is the balance between, ego is the balance between both the ID and superego. Here he is the pursuer, he is the desuder. Ego is a balance between both the ID and superego. So this is all about psychoanalytical model. Here superego, he has some values, social values. ID is the person who is ready to break any rules to get what they want. So here I will get it by any other form. So here ego, superego, this is not the way to get it. So you need to follow some rules, ethics to get the things. Ego is a balance between these two. Let's work on it, then we will get the things. So this is the balance between both the ID and superego. So this is all about psychoanalytical model. Next one, sociological model. Fourth one, sociological model. Sociological model, according to sociological model, the individual buyer behavior is influenced by the society, by intimate group as well as the social classes. So basically this model is meant for the society. Here the consumer buying behavior is totally influenced by the society. According to this model, the consumer is not going to give a preference for the concept of utility. They are not going to consider the benefits from the product, but they consider the social opinion or their society members. That may be classified into two categories. First one, primary group, and secondary group. So this, according to sociological model, the consumer buying behavior is totally influenced by the society. This society can be classified into two categories. First one, primary group and secondary group. So here the consumer will take the opinion from the family members, friends, close relatives, then other societal members while purchasing the product. So it is totally influenced by the society members. So here the consumer is not going to give a preference for the concept of utility. Here they give a preference for the society opinions or society behavior. So here they prefer, consumer is going to give a preference for the society rather than the utility. Under the primary group, it includes family members, friends, then close relatives. Under primary group, first preference is for primary group. So they give a preference for family members, friend and close relatives. So their buying behavior, consumer, sometimes they purchase the goods and services for their family members as well as for the friends and for the relatives. So they give a preference for this primary group. It includes family members, then friends, then close relatives. Here this includes, primary group includes this 3. Secondary groups, it includes the society, general society and the personality type and requirement based on the same. For example, my friend joined for this course. So he's also going to join for the same course. So requirement based on the same. So here the personality type, other family, other society members and requirement based on the same. Society is classified into this through 2 types. So they are going to influence the consumer buying behavior. So according to this model, you need to concentrate on this primary group and secondary group. Analyze in order to learn the consumer buying behavior. In order to understand the consumer behavior, you need to concentrate, you need to learn the consumer, primary members and primary group and secondary group, that is society. So its consumer buying behavior is totally influenced by the society. So this is all about sociological model. Here it includes inputs, processing and outputs. So here the consumer input is desire, that is needs and wants. Then processing. Processing means here the first step, the needs and wants is occurred. In processing, they collect the information or feedback. They collect information or feedback. Then after collecting information, processing, then output. He is going to respond. Output, whether they make a decision whether to purchase or not. So in addition to this step, you can add one more step, that is feedback loop. After purchasing, he may get, consumer is going to give the feedback for the products, whether it is satisfied or not. So this can be follow this process. The sociological model will follow this steps. Next, Francisco Nicosia model. So this is the second type. Under consumer buying behavior model, we have 2 types. So one is traditional model and second one contemporary model. So this is the first model under contemporary models. So Francisco Nicosia model. Well-known consumer motivation and behavior experts, Mr. Francisco presented this buyer model in 1966. So this model is introduced in 1966. This model attempts to establish a linkage between the marketing firm and its consumers. So here, according to this model, he tries to link between the marketing organization or manufacturer and consumers. So here they try to link between the marketing firm and its consumers, because the relationship between the consumer and the manufacturers is important in order to satisfy the consumers. So in order to get the effective results, the relationship between the manufacturer and consumer is important. So they try to establish a link between the firm and consumer. The essence ID, how the activities of the firm influence the consumer and results in decision to buy. According to this model, the message from the firm first influence the predisposition of the consumer towards the product. That means the first message from the organization or the firm which influence the consumer buying behavior, because the consumer will not aware about the products or new products which are entering into the market. So the first message from the firm which influence the consumers. When the consumer get the information from the firms, so then they are going to search for the products. So after searching the products, they will get the information, detailed information about the product, so that they make a decision to purchase the product. The first message from the firm which influence in a positive way. So it influence in a positive way towards the consumers to buy the products. So here first the firm is going to give information or The firm is going to give the message to the customers. So after this, the consumer is going to get the information. Consumer will get information. After that, he will search for information. So they give the clues. Firm will give clues to the consumers about the products, so that he will search for the product, search for information or search for product. So after searching, then they are going to evaluate. Evaluate the information. So after evaluation, they make a decision. That is whether to purchase the product or not. After that, he will give the feedback. Last one. Last step, feedback, whether it is satisfied or not. If the consumer is satisfied with the product, then again he is going to purchase the same products, or else the consumer will switch from your product to competitors' products. So first, the information from the firm, which influence the consumer buying behavior. It impact positively on the consumer buying decision. So if the firm successfully give the information to the consumer, means so that the consumer will get attract and he build interest, and they search for the information, then after searching the information, they are going to evaluate the information, then they make a decision to purchase or not. So after purchasing the product, they are going to give the feedback for the organization or firms. According to this model, they try to establish a link between the organization and consumers. So if the consumer will get the information from the organization, then the consumer will know the new products which are entering into markets, so that they make a decision. So they can search for information, then they make a decision. So here the relationship between the consumer and manufacturer is important factors. According to these factors, they are trying to establish a linkage between these two. So this is all about Francisco Nicosia model. So here, after giving the information, the consumer will develop a certain attitude towards the product. It may be positive, so that the consumer will make a decision to purchase the products. So these steps have a positive impact on the consumers. For example, biomagnetic ear stickers for weight loss, it apply the pressure on a specific part of the ear. So it helps to reduce the weight. So that this is the product which is available in the market in order to lose the weight. So, but this product, the consumer is not aware about this product, so that the demand for your product, or it will not reach to the customers. If the manufacturer gives information, if the manufacturers or the firms give the information to the consumers, then it will impact positively, so that the demand for your product will increases. So this product is not reached to the customers. So this is the example for this models. If the consumers has given the information to the consumer, then this product will reach to the consumers. So here the manufacturer fails to give the information. So this is an example for Francisco Nicosia model. So this is all about Francisco Nicosia model. Next one, the Howard-Sheth model. So this is the second model under contemporary model. John Howard and Jagdish Sheth presented their Bayer model in 1969. So this model is presented in 1969. It is an integrated model. So this assumes problem-solving approach in buying and adopts input-output or system approach in buying. This model says it assumes problem-solving approach. That means your product should be a solution for the consumer problem. So it assumes that if you give a solution for the consumer problems, then they make a decision to purchase your product. Howard introduced learning process in buying. Satisfaction leads to brand loyalty. Discontentment creates brand switching by the buyers. That means if the consumer is satisfied with your product, means then the consumer will purchase your product. So it leads for brand loyalty. brand loyalty. If the consumer is not satisfied with your product, then it creates brand switching from the buyers. So that you need to give the solution. You need to give the solution for the consumer problems. They assume that problem solving approach. So here it is the input output process. So according to this model, there is some inputs and there are some outputs. In between this input and output, some of the factors which influence the consumer buying behavior. So you need to concentrate on that factors. So here, next, in other words, the logic of this model is that there are inputs in the form of stimuli. There are some inputs. There are some inputs in the form of stimuli, that is internal push. There are outputs beginning with the attention to give the stimulus and ending with the purchase. So there are output means it ends with purchase. In between these inputs and outputs, there are variables affecting the perception learning. Here, in between the inputs and outputs, some of the factors which influence the consumer decision. So these variables hypothetical as they cannot be directly measured. So there are some invisible attributes, that is stimuli. First one, next perception, then learnings. So stimuli, perception, learning. These three are invisible factors which influence in this input to output processing. So internal push. So the needs and wants of the consumers. Perception towards the product or thing. Then learning, that is past experience of the consumers. So these three are invisible attributes which influence the output. So from these factors, make a decision output, that is whether to purchase or not. So this model says the consumer satisfaction is an important factor. So you need to satisfy the consumer so that they will continuously purchase your product. That is, it helps to create the brand loyalty. So you need to give the solution for the consumer problems. So your product should be in the solution form for the consumer problems. So this is all about Howard-Sheth models. So this is the last model under the contemporary model according to your syllabus. So that for this topic, we finished with the consumer buying behavior. So this is all about today's session. In the next session, let us meet with the new concepts. Until then, keep watching. Thank you.